The test for Iyar Tashin Samech Tes were in Hemshik Samech Tes of the Yeshav on Ahmed Kaf Zayin.
Today Tes here was the outside of the base Pinchas, the person sitting near the base Pinchas, and so it was Pinchas Alta is all Shalom. Today was his Tes here, it's his Huh? Right. So we saw that in Shem HaToyah, that the Shem HaToyah was Tayer Shnei Inyonim. Aleph, it was Mataya de Mahus HaKli, and the Tiv Hachona of the Kli Alidei Avedis Adam or Lamaila. Alidei, the fact that it's Etzem Melakus, that the Kelim are also Melakus, and they're Muchen Lakabal as Mitzad Hiyesim Gam Melakus. And we saw that there was a further Inyan that they were Mataya, the Shalamayla Mi Slapshas Mamish in the Keli, and that was the Etzem HaOyer, that was the Inyan of Shema Etzem, the Oyer Shal Atzmius HaKoyach or Asfira, how it is Lamayla Lagamri, well not Lagamri, but Lamayla Minan Slapshas, and it's only Shira in the Kli, and we saw that it was Bekoyach, the Tiv Hachona of the Kli, even to give some picture and some idea to the Makablim of that oil, which is Meir or Hoponim Shira in the Kli. And we saw that was the two inyanim of Shem HaToyah, and then we saw that we compared that to the inyan of Gavnei HaKelim, and we saw that there was a Gavon Atzmi, a Gavon which was in the Etzem Kli, and it had an effect on the oil that it was Meir al Ha'etzem, similar to what we saw the inyan of Mataya as Ha'etzem, and we bought a dugma from an apple, a red apple or other colors. They are more on the etzem makeup of the apple, whether it's a sweet apple or a sour or a ka'etz there. She'im marim al ha'etzem, and in a similar way, we saw that even though not completely similar, but that was the union of Chokma Sodom Toir Ponov, that even though the Ponim wasn't a Kli Mamish to the HaChokma, but nonetheless, there was a certain indication in the Kli which indicated the Ha'achmi that is Meir in the Kli. And we saw that that's Tafki Yoev Chokma Sel Hakimin, that the Eivish gives Tafki to those who prepared and worked on the Kli. B'Shem HaToyah, then he gives them the Shema Etzem, and the Kli is indicatory. The Kli indicates that they have received this oil, which is in Emerson Lamayla Mi and Akli. So that was Beneget to the Shema Toyah, and then we saw, however, the Shema Pu'ula was already shaykh to Chitanius Ha'oyer, and that was Meir Alidei Chitanius Ha'kli. We saw the Be'ika, that Indian was shaykh to Malchus. Even though Be'emes, it's also shaykh to the Malchus of Kol Sfira in Be'lama Atzilas. But we saw that was a Hamshocha, which was shaykh Be'ika Ba'atzilas. That's to say, the Ashpur from one Sfira to the other within Be'lama Atzilas Atzmai. But the Hamshocha of the Spheres into Spheres HaMalchus, which eventually leads to the Hamshocha Michutz LaAtzilas, but that's in an Hamshocha into Elam as Biyah, or that's Alidei Be'ika Spheres HaMalchus Atzmoi, how Spheres HaMalchus is Mekabel from the Malchus Shebekol Sphera, and then it becomes the Ika Mashpia into Elam as Biyah. And we saw that was the union of Shem HaPula, what its union was Chutz LeAtzilas, Piulas, that's right near the bottom of the page, Isavas, Upulas Hagilui B'Elam as Biyah. Ve'im Kain, Ika Shema Piula who begins Malchus Davke. Therefore we saw that Malchus is called Shem, or it's called other Lashanas, and that's what we went on to see, the passage from Yecheskel Anovi. V'zeu Shamalchus Nikra Mare Demus Kvoid Hashem. So we saw all of those Lashanas, Mare, Demus, and Kvoid are all indicatory of names which indicate the effect to the Makablim, not the very essence of the Inyan itself. And therefore we saw that the Inyan of Mare V'Gavon, that also indicated the Inyan of Keli. Avalei b'chinas Gavon Achmi, not a essential Gavon, k'moi ha'kelim da'atzilas, ki im b'chinas Gavon nivdal mino ha'etem, dahainu she'eno ein inyon lataya es ha'etem, ki im lifoel chutz laha etem. U'kanal b'inyan ha'malucha, shegam b'chinas ha'reimamas da'malucha, Shayocha Rach Ella Zulat. You know, Reimamus is a tenor of going into the self and the self-elevation and drawing away from the Makabel. And we saw that Reimamus of the Inyan Malchus, despite the fact that it was a Inyan from Aliyah Vistalkus from the Makablim, would be emes, that is also shy to the Makablim, because Davki Ali Deze, they're able to be Makabel from the Miller, the Makabel over there. All the necessities and all the diktuki hamadina and all the chayas v'chulu, but we saw that was the two opposites in the Reimamus of Malchus. On the one hand, it was a Inyan from Aliyah Vistalkes, and on the other hand, it was a Inyan of Hashpur Davki Ela Azula. So here we see the concept of a Gavon, which is Nivdal Mina. So we need to understand what does it mean a Gavon ha-nivdal min ha'etem. What does it mean a color which is kilo nivdal min ha'etem, and Ika Inyone is el azulas or lifoel chutz mea etem. So we could suggest that that's what we find, that certain kelim or certain inyonim are painted with a color which is only a dova nivdal michutz le inyan etem choimer hakli, in order to throw an effect on the world around or on the makablim. For example, you can have a sort of a light that behemoths, it's a push at the light, but they paint it around with a heavy red color, and it looks to the people outside as it were a red light, although really it's a dova nivdo min ha'etzem, it's not charged to the etzem. And its whole inyan is only to be poil a hesitation or a stop or a cage of his on the part of the makablim that michutz le'etzem akli. In other words, it's just a what you might call a shichva, like a layer of color which is on the outside. And so Lamaila we find that there are certain parsois and inyonim between Malchus Datzilas and Biyar. And if you're familiar with the whole Biyar Benegir to the inyan of the parsois is what's called Malach Sandal. That Kaviyachol, there's a sandal around Malchus Datzilas.
Malach like an angel?
Huh?
Malach like an angel?
Migich?
Malach like an angel? Malach?
Yeah, Malach Sandal. Yeah, it's like an angel. Yeah. It's, so we see that the inyan of a sandal, on the one hand it fits the foot exactly. If it doesn't fit the foot, it'll give you blisters or whatever. That's what it'll do. But on the other hand, the whole inyan is really only to make you able to relate to the ground, because otherwise your feet are not going to be able to take the ground. The whole thing is to help you relate to the Matthias of the world, michutz la-regel shelcha. V'lachen, people wear other things all throughout the world, different sorts of coverages on the feet, according to the necessities of the area where they live or what they're they're used to or they're accustomed to. So we see that that's a coverage which fits exactly the foot. And that's Beklal, the inyan of Levushim. It's the one that the Chetanias, Hakelim, are connected with the concept of Levush. K'mavur b'havim akemesin. So that's what the whole Indian of a lefush is to fit you. It has to be matim, and has to be dovuk ela dover hamislavish boy. But on the other hand, the whole purpose of the lefush is only for the sake of them mikablim mibachutz, and it's also to help the Adam relate to dvarim shemichutz mimenu. Therefore, that's the Indian of a gavon, which is inyone eno achmi, ela lifel chutzla leho etem. Mashenkin, we saw that the gavonim pnimiyim, their Indian was that they were in the etem akli, they were the etem machias of the kli, and that they were poil a certain kinyan in the oil itself, albeit they didn't change the nature or the etem mahusa diwa. Ilukan, the whole union is not to be poil anything in the oil, going to get to the pneumias of the kli, or only to be mashpia akala mibchutz lahakli, for the sake of makablim shemichutz. That's called a gavon, how do you call it, a chitania, or a gavon bilti achmi, but it's all in and it's only chutz la'etzem. Okay, now, and as we saw above, the Indian hamalucha, similarly, we saw that even though the Reimamas is an Indian from Malchus, and Malchus is an Indian from Kli, and Reimamas was an Indian from withdrawal, nonetheless, the whole Indian of that Reimamas was really for the sake of the Zulas. How much more so than what we saw later in Malchus, which was only Shem. It's only a radiation and a development. That because of the Reimamas, therefore it's possible that his name can go all over the Medina and be effective because he's so elevated and so laudated, as you might say. And the his pashta shmoi is also a derivative of the Reimamas. Arezerak al azulas. We saw that that was only for the sake of the azulas. Even though we saw there was a gadlus achmius in the melech, but it wasn't shakala etzem hashpoel azulas. No, that was gadlus atzmusay. Okay, Kain yuvan be'inyan amalchus lamayla shezeu rak liyet b'chinas keser va'atikle brio. That the whole inyan of the Reimamas of Malchus and the whole Reimamas and his pashta shmoi klapei the Medina in the Nimshal lamayla is that it goes off a oyer michutz le'etzem ha'atzilas, and it becomes a keser va'atik lebrio. It becomes like a mamutza between Malchus and the actual creation, yesh mi'ayin, of Olam HaBrio, and therefore it's called keser va'atik, just like we have l'mayla me'atzilas. We have the Inif and Pnimius HaKeser, which is called Atik, and that connects the Ein Seif HaPoshut with the Inyan of Atzilas. Similarly, from Malchus that goes out of Ha'ora, which makes it literally a melech and a keser over Bria, Olam HaBria, and that's the whole purpose of the Ispashtas of the Reimamas. So we see that the whole purpose of Malchus, the Chitzuniusa of Hoponim, is only to begin the whole creation of Olam HaBria and to become a keser va'atik lo'olam HaBria. See, the whole idea is that it should be the creation of the Olam Bria and Lady Yetzirah and Asiya, the Ashpur, Bohem, and the giving over all the Ashpur that they need. That we got then 2 or even 3 main madrigas in the Indian from Malchus. Now we have Malchus as Mamish Asphira in Atzilas, and it's Mamish Dovuk in Olam HaAtzilas as one of the spheres. However, we see the Ika Pa'ula of Malchus, and Ika HaMalchus is really to be a Pa'ula. Well, that's the Indian of how it's Nimshach into the Indian of Olam HaBria. Over that Kufa, 2 stages. First of all, it becomes a Keser of Atik Bria, it becomes a Reimamas Al-Am of is still withdrawn from the Am, and then there's a more detailed, a more specific Ashpar, which is nimtzach into all the elements in detail, and gives them all of the detailed Ashpar that they need, and that comes and is made possible by the Reimaments, by the greatness and the withdrawal of the king. Shekol zeh u dafki chutz le'etzemah, all this is dafki outside Atzilas. Im kein harizeh b'china ha'ora nivdeles mino etzem. Im kein is a ha'ora nivdeles. It's already a separate radiation or illumination from the etzem. V'lochein hu be'erech liyes b'chinas moker le'biyah. She'ein nivroim balige vul. They're already limited creations. We see then that ha'or of nivdelis from Malchus, even though Malchus itself is one of the Esser spheres, but this ha'or which goes off b'derech Shem ha'piula from Malchus, that becomes a mocker, and must be be'er to that, to be a mocker to the union of Elamus Biyah, and the whole purpose is to bring about and create all the nivroim, which are nivro yesh mi'ayin, even from Baliga Gavul, they're all limited be'etzem inyanam, and that is the inyan of the two stages in Malchus. First of all, that it becomes a Reimam and Salam boy from Kloli, Keser Atik, and then al yidei that Keser Atik it becomes a Mashpia and is Mahava all the detailed Madregas in even from Yesh Mi'ayin, and that's the Indian of Shema Pa'ula be'ike and B'shleimus Amuvan, the Shema Piula. V'sev says the Rebbe, das Choles Hazman, the Ovor, Hoive, V'osid, Hu B'malchus Tavke. The whole Indian of Zman, and the whole beginning of time, is Tavke in Spheres HaMalchus. Right, we say every day in davening, Hashem Moloch, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yimloch Le'elam Avoid. In other words, we indicate that in the concept of Malucha, Melech, we have three beginners, Moloch, Melech, and Yimloch, over Hoive, V'yiyeh, or Osid, all of them connected and linked in the name of Malucha. We see then that the Ike Inyan of Zman begins with the Inyan of Malchus. And Davki Malchus are shayat to the Inyan van Elamus, the Inyan van Elamus Biyah. But Zman hu Gvul, the Inyan van Zman is limitation. Shezer go Ike Inyan Azman Kenoida. That is the whole principle Inyan of Zman Kenoida. Yes, is well known that Zman is the Inyan of a limitation. So what is that? Why would we say that Zman is the Inyan of limitation? So we see that the three famous levels which they brought down in the Sefer Yetzirah, and they're called Oshan. You have a Har Sinai, Oshan Kulei. Oshan is the three levels of Oilom, Shona, and Nefesh. And so Oilom, what that means, Inyan van Nivroim, keeps you the Oilom. Oilom, that's Inyan van Nivroim. And Nefesh, that's the Inyan van Malchus, as well known. That's the Nefesh of all the Oilomas, or that's the Malchus. And that says the word, the Mokir of the Chayas Eloki, that's Nefesh. Or that's called the Mokir of the Nefesh of all the Nivroim. In the middle you got Zman. You got Shona. What Shona means is time, it means year. So it's well known that that's the Mamutza between the Ike Elokus, which is the Chayas, and the Inyan van Olam, which is Olam. The Mamutza between them is Zman, which means that the Ike beginning of the whole limitation and the whole Gevul of Olam is, the Ike connecting point is Zman. And that's why we see in Malchus, in many occasions, we say Hashem Molach, Hashem Melech Hashem Yimlech, you say it in different ways. You indicate the inner of tense in verse 2, inner Malucha, in different psukim. So we see then that what is the inner of Zman? So in Atzilus he's about to say that Atzilus is Lamaylam Yasman, and even in Atzilus and Ishtok Yasman. Even though there's what we call a Seder Zmanim, or Bamash Zman and Ishtok. So what's the Indian? We see that immediately you say that you got a reggae, but that reggae is Hoyo, it already was. And then you say that this reggae, which is at the moment is, well, it's very hard to pinpoint that, because a second before it wasn't, and another second it's already into the future, into the Hoive. This is one known as a reggae Kimemre. As soon as you do that, and you differentiate, you say that reggae is not the previous reggae, and it's not the reggae which is going to count. Then you've gone into the whole union of limitation. In other words, you're either you belong in the past, or if you're fortunate, you belong a bit in the future, or you belong in the present, or if it's well. In other words, that you're already mechulak, letachlis hagbala, and therefore we see that the ikka hagbala by a mensch is time. The ikka thing which limits a mensch is time. And it's like the old famous quote that a man says, "Oh, I just didn't have I just didn't find the time. I really meant to do it, and I meant this, and I meant something else, and I had in mind all the great ideas, but I just didn't have the time." In other words, I was in the past, but I really meant to be in the present, but I didn't find myself in the present. I always found myself in the future. It just didn't work out. Well, I see there's a bit of a joke here, and he's gaining for a small nivra, yesh mi'ayin v'chuli, he's gaining much more attention than one would have thought. And so it just shows you the famous mashal which was brought down at Siddur. There was actually more than one of them. The famous mashal which was brought down at Siddur, that if you want to make even a great king, if you want to be matne, he's sumas lev. Mitadis greidel haremim, as he's not able to pay attention to anything, then you bring him a tzipah hamidah, a tzipah hamidah peres. You bring him a talking bird, and then even even the great king. So this is an interesting. He turns his mind for a moment. Ladova hazeh. So we see that these Jukes are going to go down in history. That all the loim that sitters, all turned their minds and looked at them and grinned, and Kaitim was there. But these little Jukes. So it's a sign that the small have the power over the great. How does the expression have it? So anyway, whatever be the Indian, that the Ikka Hagbola, when I mention Mizbain, and the Ikka thing that limits him is time. Much more than place or of that nature. What really limits a person is time. And therefore we see he's always running after time, and he's always saying, "Oh, if I would have had the time, if I could have found the time, if I would have done this, I would have done that." But in the meantime, the time went into. Okay, so listen, we're going to have to do something about it. I mean, either I leave the room or they leave the room, or something has to happen. I can't go on like this with all the with everybody looking at them. Well, I don't know if you should have done that. What's with the, I don't know what happened with it. It's a shame because of somebody's klein Keppigkeit and the Tzimtzum HaMoyach, Tzimtzum Menschlichkeit, somebody had to kill it. It's neged Kisvei Arisa v'chulu. But anyway, it doesn't help to talk. It's soft nicht to read. So we see that that's the Ikka Hagbola in a mensch's time. says the Rebbe, the Ike Inyan of Gvul is the Inyan from Zman. And therefore, that's one of the great musarim that a man has to be misboinen. What's he do with his time? Because the Inyan from time is that is Gvul. When you were a mile of his man, then you wouldn't have any Gvul. Nothing would stop you from anything. It's for known, the famous Taina of the Chassidim is to say some of the old Chassidim that the only time they managed to be Lamaila as man is Shabbat. And even then, Sokosof, Yeres as man, Sokosof, Efes as man is done. Over the Hagosha from Lamaila as man is Shabbat. But you got to be careful what you say around here, because the next thing is they'll take you literally and they say, oh yeah, Shabbos Lamaila as man, Taki. I'll roll up to the minyan at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and somebody will say, what are you doing? And you say, oh, I was Lamaila man. So therefore I was medactic to say that the Ike Hargosha has to be Lamaila man. Top, yesh laharik v'zeh. And therefore we see that that's the Ike Inyan of Gvul. So therefore the Rebbe says that the Ike Inyan Azman is Gvul, Kenoida. V'shayat rak b'pinas hamalchus, l'fi shehu ha'ore ha'nivdeles mina etzem. When you get into the Inyan from Avdola, Manas, Lifoel, Michutz la'etzem, then you have Zman. But in Atzilus Kufa, it's not Shayach, and that's what he says now. Avu v'Atzilus einu shayach klal Inyan Azman v'hagvul. V'yesh ta'Atzilus hu b'chinas Elikus, b'chinas Iyar Atzmi, hadovuk b'ha'etzem, u'kanal, b'Inyan HaMoshul, d'shalheves ha'keshura b'ha'gacheles. If you remember, we had in the previous part of the Maimah, very early on in this Maimah, we brought the example of the flame which is still connected and united with the coal after the fire, main part of the fire is burnt down, and you have these coals and they give forth flames. The flames are still essentially connected with the coal, and the biopneumonia is because the fire is anyway inside the coal. What it does is it appears, and it's borlet klapi Milo, what that's indicatory, the yichud achmi of the eres and the keilim with their moke, which is Elikus.
In this muscle of the coal and the fire, is there anything like with the smoke, or is there any place in the muscle?
No, smoke is not so much connected with the Inyan from smoke. You're saying I referred before to the Inyan from Oshon.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, I must say that Loi Roisi considers the connection of smoke with the Shalevas Akshura B'Gacheles and Elam Atzilas. I haven't seen. But Henochanami, the Inyan from Oshon is Be'ika connected with Olam Shona V'Nefesh. Well, that's Ika connected with Olam is Biyah. So what you were trying to taina is that maybe the ocean is already the Ashpor Michutz L'Atzilah. As if that's what you were trying to taina, then maybe you have a point. Since I haven't seen that mafurish in Drush Echsilas, Ad L'Rega Zeh, the fire, I hesitate somewhat to say it. Ulai Yesh Lema. Yeah, Ulai Yesh Lema. However, says the Rebbe, that in Atzilus everything is united. Yeah, the Kelim are all united with the Iyar, and the Iyar is united with the Etem. Yeah, Iva Chayeh Echad, Iva Gameh Echad, as we saw. And therefore, says the Rebbe, everything is Dovuk and Miyuchad, and therefore you can't have an Inyan Shel Zman, because Zman is Inyan from Gvul, and in Atzilus ain't Gvul. So that asks us the question on the part of the attentive reader, well, it says that in Atzilus, that is not, let's just finish. V'gam ha'kelim d'Atzilus, haim b'pinas gavon atzmi kanal. Even the kelim, which they're gavonim, that's what he color, but we saw that was gavon atzmi. It was in the very essence of the kli, and it united with the Iyar, and it brought about a gavon even in the Iyar. And therefore we saw that was a Inyan Atzmi Ulazaish Mibchinas Atzilas Mamish. Efshar liyes isavas biyah. And therefore, from Atzilas Mamish, you can't have the actual creation of Biyah, Lefishayin Be'erach Klal. It's not Be'erach whatsoever. Ki im mebchinas Malchus D'Atzila. Dafke from the Malchus of Atzilas, Ukemoi, Shehili Acha HaParsa, and after what Malchus already goes through, this union of the Gavon, which is Elachutz, and becomes a mocker to the union from Biyah, is Yochel Liyes is Savas Bi. After it's gone through the curtain, literally, or the sandal, or those union that we pointed out before. Then it becomes Mamish a mocker to Biyah. So the Fizeh he said in Atzilas, it's not really Shai Gvul. So it's well known, there's a big discussion about that in Siddur as to whether that is really the case or not. And it's much more in the shit of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe gehalten that there is the Inen von Gvul in Atzilas. He held that the Kelim were a Inen shel Gvul compared to the Oires. And he even held that the Kelim are Inen von Briyish of Atzilas, v'chulu. So how come that we say there's no Gvul in Atzilas, particularly we talk about the Inen HaKelim? So the answer to that is that Atzilas is what we call Koyach HaGvul. It's not the Inen from Gvul Mam. It's what we say that there's already a potentiality which can bring about a Inen Shel Gvul Kipshutei, because there is already a Gilui of the Koyach HaGvul, Pirush, already a Gilui of the Shleimus of the Eibishter, how he is Ein Seif, a Shleimus in Atzmas Ein Seif of the Koyach HaGvul Gamke. And therefore there's a certain Indian of what we call the potentiality of Gvul, or not Mamish Gvul Ki Pshutei. And that Koyach HaGvul in Atzilas, or that gives rise to the Gvul Ki Pshutei al yedei the Pasach HaMafsekes and all the Inyonim of the Shemat Pa'ula Elachutz. Through that you get the Inyan of Zman, which is the first beginning of the whole Inyan HaGvul, and therefore it's not Gvul Mamish. First of all Zman, and then you pass through that into the Inyan from Gvul Mamish. So we see that there's Koyach HaGvul, and there is Gvul. That's the chilik that Atzilas does have in itself, Lafi Divrei Admor Zokin, does have in itself in from Gvul compared to the Iyar, but it's not the infant Gvul Kipshutei. It's like a mocker mitzad the Shleimus Ha'atzmas of the Inyan HaGvul, but not Mamish Gvul Kipshutei. And that's what we see that the how do you call him, the famous Sefer, the Avedas HaKodesh from the Maran Ibn Gabbai, the very famous Sefer, but he was from the letter of Rishonim, but he brings down over the Gvul Hanimto Mimenu Rishoin, who bekelim the Esses Sfiras da Atzilas, the first Gvul, which is Nimto. From the Eibishter B'Shleim Musay is the Indian of the Kelim of Esses Sfiras da Atzilas. So everybody says, well, if he's that the Kelim des Sfiras da Atzilas are Gvul. So the Alter Rebbe and Chassidus Beklau Mefarish, that doesn't mean to a certain extent it does. But Leidok is when he says a Gvul Animto Mimenu Rishoin, we mean the Koyach HaGvul, but not Mamish the Etzer meaning of Gvul. And that Koyach HaGvul is, why do we say it's not Mamish Gvul? Because the Koyach HaGvul is itself Bli Gvul. Beis HaMaimad or Beis HaMadrege, and therefore it's not the Indian from Gvul Mamish. It's and that's the what he means here, that Atzilas is Lamayla Mi'ah Gvul. He means Benegel to the Gvul Kipshutei in Biyah. But not that there's absolutely no shaykhs to Gvul Klal in the Indian from Atzilas. Alright, so that's where we're reaching now, and we're holding by this Indian that Davki through the Pasach Mafsekes. Well, that's a Shema Piyula. It's possible for there to be the Hisavas of Bri. So the Ha'oras HaMalchus, or that radiation, or that how do you call it, luminescence of the Inyan from Malchus nimshik lebiyah, ubchinas das tachtoin. Well, now we go back to what we began with in the previous Maimah, the inif and das elim v'das tachtoin, and he said, that ha'orah which goes through the pas ha'mafsekes, and its union is to become already a mocker for the Yisavas, and bring into being the Gvul and the Nivroim Bali Gvul of Olam Biyah, or that's all the union of Das Takton. Even the Inif and Ha'olas HaMalchus itself is called Das Takton. The Liyei Shazau Ma'ashe B'Chinas Shayches L'Biyah. It's got some sort of a connection and applicability already to Biyah, because it's the mocker which brings them about. So we have to say that the Eilamas have some sort of a tfisas mokim. In other words, that they have some place, that they have some form of Matthias, albeit a Matthias Patela, but they have some form of Matthias Lagabi that Ha'ora. Because that Ha'ora is Nimshach in order to be Mahava them, but even Shaim Nivroim Balik Vu. It is similar Lagabi that Ha'ora, they have some sort of a state, some sort of a, what you might call, a reality, Lagabi that Ha'ora. And therefore we have to say that Ha'ora itself is Das in a madriga which gives them a mokim, and therefore since it gives them a mokim, it's in be'etzem minyon, even though it's a Iyar Eloki, it's a inif and das tachte. Ulazais hadeya shom, the deya in that particular level, who beginners das tachte, dahainu mi ayin le yesh. In other words, it lagabi the mekabel tori yesh. But it says that it comes from a inifan ayin. It's not masig the level from which it comes, even though that ayin is not a emasa ayin. It's only a level which is korev and got some sort of a shaykhus to the inyan of the yesh, and it's only called ayin because we're not masig what it really is. And similarly, a bitul, the feeling, the bitul in the heritage of all the nivroim in Olam Biyah is gam mitzad b'chinas ha'oyer, even mitzad the oyer, not just mitzad their being nivroim, no, even mitzad the oyer which is maya in them. That's what he says. Gam mitzad b'chinas ha'oyer v'chaya sheba nivroim hu b'chinas bitl hayesh levad v'kol shechen, and how much more so begufa nivroim atzmon, in the very essence of their bodies and their kelim and their gufim, then how much more so their bittul, the only bittul they can feel is the bittul of das taktoi. So here we see a chiddush, and here what we saw earlier, but the Rebbe stated way back in that Maimah, that the inif and das elin and das takten is not two opinions mitzad the makablim. No, this is in etzem elokus itself, two levels of the Shefa Eloki, two levels in which the whole Indian, the divine influence reaches in the world, or relates to the world. And if Das Elin is the Gilui Elokus, and the Iyar Eloki, and the feeling of the Iyar Eloki, how it is in Atzilus. Das Taktoin is in the Iyar Gufa, in the Etzem Iyar Eloki, with the Eivish is Mahava, with that Iyar is Mahava, all the Nivroim, or the way that comes through the Gavon, Nivdal, or that's the Indian of the Parsa, or that's already a Iyar which has got some Shaykhs, El Nivroim, but that means the Etzem Iyar itself is Das Taktoin, Lagavi, Amitius, Elokut. And therefore, we see that the etzem das stay there, kale there is Havaya, and this is in the etzem Eloki atzmei, and how much more so in their actual Matthias, that their gufas and their kelim, how much more so that it's only a inif and das takter, and therefore it's a inif and bittel hayesh bil. The heritage is a heritage for the age, and the bittul is a giving away of the self, albeit that's a very qualitative bittul, or it's not a bittul amiti. V'kol shein beguf hanivoyim etzem. Avo b'atzilus hadeyahu b'chinas das eliyah. In Atzilus, it's exactly the opposite of that. In Atzilus, the deya in the Iyar and even in the kelim, is a inyan van das Elyon mi yesh lo ayin, that they see Elikus to be the Yeshua Miti, and they see all of the Nivroim and Elam Biyah to be ayin and ever. They don't have any Matthias Klau. Eliyesh the Iyu v'chayeyu chad, since the Oiris and the Eibishte in Atzilas of a Tachlisah Hayichud that we just pointed out. Harei nirga shom, it's felt. That's the Nakuda. It's not just that happens to be the case, but it's nirgash shom hamokir. Every in Atzilas you only feel the emes hamokir, which is atzmas ain't say. Ve'ekshuhu levadehu yeinzu. Like you feel only him, and there's absolutely nothing apart from him, and that's exactly what the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, in Perek Lamed Hey, in the famous Haggadah, but again, the Chochmah De'ah, Achilas, that there the Hargosha is, Hu Levade Ve'einzu, Losi V'zuhi Madregasah, Chochmah, as he writes over there, the Alter Rebbe, She'ein Ein Safe, Meir u'Mislavish b'chol Achilas, Alidei Slapshusi b'Chochmah, Tchila, as he writes over there in the Haggadah. Kamesha Kosev b'Sefer Shalbein in Perek Lamed Hey b'Haggadah b'Madreigas HaChochmah, that's the inyan van Hu Levade Ve'ein Sulose v'cheinu b'Klolos Achilas. That's how it is in the whole generality of Achilas. The Abo Iloah Mekanan B'Yah Achilas, the most high Chochmah, meaning Chochmah Iloah, or that's literally the Mekanen. It's like it nests, and its whole inyan is the whole of Achilas is bottled to Chochmah Iloah. And since that's the case, then that bittul that there is in Chochmah, that's a meir b'chol elam Achilas, and that's what he brings in the Haggadah, the Alter Rebbe She'ein Ein Say. Meir b'chol Achilas el alidei slapshusei b'tchila b'tfilas ha'choch. So we see that the whole inyan from Achilas is botel and makabel for the inyan from Chochmah, and Chochmah is the inyan from Hu Levade Ve'einzu. So that's mitzad the oilos, and particularly Chochmah. The Chochmah is kuli oil. Kemat ein klibe in a gela Chochmah. He said, "V'gam b'chinas hakelim da'Achilas, hein b'chinas yichudei." He said, even the kelim, even those inyonim haraya begeder eishu matiyah in Achilas, they're also the inyan from Yechudi Lo. And here he has another mocha in Tanya. Okay, Moshe Kosev b'Sefer Shalbein him Perek Kof v'Kof Aleph K'moshe Machshava Udibu Ba'idom Klulim B'Liboy U Moichoi B'Liboy V'Moichoi. But if you remember in Perek Kof, and particularly in Perek Kof Aleph, but the Alter Rebbe is Mavayar over there how really all the Oilamas are B'Teilim, B'Tzias Mamish, because they never really go, how do you call it, Kula Kamei, Kaloi Chashivei, and there's really no Yetzia Mi Kamei, everything is really Kol V'Botel in Ein Seif, and he brings the famous Dugma of the Oisias, the inyan of Makshova, how they're Klulim, or the Oisias, even higher than Makshova. The Oisias of Makshova, the Oisias of Makshova, how they're Klulim in the inyan Eser Bechinas, either in the inyan of Moichin or in the inyan of Midas, how they're Klulim in the Koyach HaChesed or the Koyach HaBina v'HaChochmah v'chulu, the Oisias are the Klulim in those Koyches. He said, what they're B'Teilim B'Matthias like Amrei, and they don't really have any Matthias, and then he says that's the way it is, B'Kol HaMadregas and B'Kol HaYishtalshelas, because you can't really, how do you call it, be distant from the Eibishter, that Kula Kamei Kaloi Chashiva, and everything is kol bottle and im balavochi. So the Yetzia, like Gabi Chutz, that's what the Oisias look as if they've gone out of that market, that's only to the Ne'oim. Over the Gabi the Eibishter, of course he sees and he knows that they never went out from that state how they are Krulim in their market, they never went out. because the whole Tzimtzum and the whole Hester is only Legabi the Makablim, but not Legabe. Therefore, the whole world is really Kolul, in all the elements are really Klulim in their Mokke, how they are in Elakuz. So the Rebbe says that the Inif and the where that's Begolui, even Legabi the Makablim is an Elam Atzilus. And it's true of all the other elements of it. It's not Begolui. Of Atzilus, it's Begolui. And therefore, the Oiros, like he just said in the Inif of Chochmah, and the Kelim are also Betalim, according to that, has been Perekov and Kof Aleph. In Olam Atzilus, everything is bottled for Kolul, in a even for an Actus Mamish, in Elakus. Shahakel, Hubchinas Actus, Papinas Beetle, the Kula Kamei Kalecha, Shiva, that's the Inifana. The only way you can get Biyah is if you're Malim, or that Giloi Atzmi of Atzilas, and you bring about a Helam, like Gabi de Makablim, and then it's possible to be, and that's what he's Mavayah there in that Perikintani. So the far it comes to us that really everything is bottled with Tachisah, Bittul Pinktas Evid the Makshavu Dibu Betecha Koyach HaChochma. The difference is that in Elam Atzilus does it Begolui, and in Elam Abriya Yitzir Vasir has been the Selem. At Helam was only Legavi the Makablim. But what should we do? Bentayim, where Makablim, we only see that part of it. We don't see a beetle, except if you open your eyes. Except if you open your eye. But the Rebbe has been trained that that's the Aveda Akshab, the soft Kolagolas. The Aveda is to mamish open the eyes, because the preparation for that has been made all b'meshek kol ha'avedas or kol ha'deiros kulam, and now it's only nisha rak liftoach et ha'inayim v'lirois es ha'bitl ha'am amiti and lirois eikshem Mashiach oimed, not achal kosleinu, no, he's mamish oimed. Had he heard the shulchan is oroch, and the table is prepared, and everything is ready. So you got to change your gear altogether, and you got to get out of this old suburban Balabatish hesitationalism. You know, if you say, if I'll say, there's plenty, is not going to like it. And the fact, you have to go with the immediate, the Rebbe Sotas, the Sayyidas. So plenty will also come along. If he sees that you go along, then he'll also go along. What he would do is hesitate and veterechet. He'll become even more deep in sein hesitation than he is now. Rachmanin. Was l'chera ain't shum but what is holding everything up? What's it about? What's kandozai? It's very hard to see what's the Rebbe here. It's like as if it's all just, very close to draining around, like these machines that they lose all the connection with the ball bearings. The thing just runs around, beli litkader. And that's where we're holding right now. And be careful, we're all hesitating. We're all saying, nobody ever really said this before. Rabbi's the first one. And so we all just hold by there, and the machine just drays around. So they don't even need Nafshim Ben Aminator. We have to jump into the Yam and the whole mountain. All we need now is somebody to say, oh yes, right, here we are. And therefore the Basi Lagani, the Rebbe said that was the last document, talks about Shtus to Kedusha. You got to be prepared to be a Meshugina. Come over. A gesunter Meshugina. Aber es hat gar nicht entaufen. So lo ja so. Therefore es ist sehr feiner Ingeman. Politik Ingeman. I know him in Bnei Brak, and he called him a carrier in Tzilimadat Tzidit. He's from a Yerushalmi Polish, so Tzidit is a zero tiring man. But one thing you won't take from us, you've got to go out on the street and just look at a few people and say, Iyar Melech Mashiach. If you'll do that, then this sicher that everything will just blow apart and Mashiach would come. He can't agree with me. He said, das ist nicht gekabelt. Well, gut, er versteht das nicht. Achayas and Halding, the Davon for Knees. He said, can't be McCabe from what I told you. I said, just step out onto the balcony, don't go mummies into the street, and just say, Iyar Melech Mashiach, what's good? That's the whole problem. We're too locked up in the old Balabati Shema, says, Shema Yom Vabriyas, and pen, Yom Pliny, and pen, Pliny, but this gefallen waren, but Kaitz, but Chule. Anyway, so that's the difference between Atzilus and the Biyah. The whole difference is only a helem. It's a nishka helem. It's only a mavur in Tanya Perikof and Kofal. However, Lagavi the Makablim says the Rebbe of the cloud. So I have been Shem Avaya L'Shem Eloi. Well, that's the difference between the two famous Shemes. The Shem Avaya, yeah. Well, actually, that should be Shem Elokim. It seems to be a mistake in the text. The Shem Elokim, who b'chinas ha'ora shanasa moker le'ilmas. Or that's in from Shem Elokim. Or that ha'ora which is meir after the pass of Malchus, and it becomes already Kesev Atik Lebrium becomes a moker to ilmas Bria Yetiravasi. Okameisha Kosu Bereshis Boro Eloi Kim, that the inner from Bria, the inner from the Savas, Yesh Miayin, or das ist von Shem Eloi Kim Davka. Shubchinas Koyach HaPoel Benifol, or that's the Koyach which becomes a Pu'ula, like we said, Michutz Laha Etzem. So for Chutz Laha Etzem, you got to have a Nifal, you got to have the Yesh, which is a Mikabel, and you got to be Poel, you got to be Mamshik the Koyach into him, the Chayas Eloki. Shelagabi Madrega Zu, or Elamas Teif Simoke, or Matir, like we said earlier. Bahare Zebchinas Das Taktoi. He said, even Lagabi de Ha'ora. Avo Shem Havaya, Ushela Maila, Mipchinas Mokele, La Ilamas, it's beyond the whole Indian of being a mocker to the Indian. To me, Etzem Shem Havaya, that from the very essence of the Shem Havaya, Ef Shaliyes, Matthias or Ilamat. It's not Shayat that there should be a Matthias or Ilamat. V'lochein, Lagabi Madrega Zo, Eino Ilamas Teifsim, Mokim, or Matthias. Lagabi Deminia from Shem Havaya, the Ilamas don't have any place. They don't, as it would, take any Matthias. And they are in an oven from Vahari Haim, Bechinas Kula Kamei Chaloicha, Shiva, all the Madregas have ever no place whatsoever. In other words, that they're like the Indian of the Oisias, how they klulim in the Etzem Koyach, or the Etzem Amida, Kemuvur over there in Prekov, alle. Okay, motion is Boliil, like we had in the Maimar previous to this one, the Loche Nema Havaya Echad, the bitter Havaya Echad is Davkisem by the Shem Havaya, and we said that Echad was the pshat that you've got all the Inyanim, even how they become Dalad Ruches and Zion Raki and Ba'oras, you've even got Aina from Nivroim, or Lagabi the Shem Havaya, they're all Kulim Betelim, Umuvutolim Ela Aleph Alufishal, Oilam, or that's the godless of the Shem Havaya, that it's Koilo, all of them even from Bittel B'Matthias. Yadua, the Shem Havaya, who be Atzilas, the Shem Hadeya, the Kula Kamei Chaloi, Shiva, that's the Inan of Atzilas. The Mamela, dort, everything is Bittel Amiti, the Bittel of Das, El Yaim. And Mamela, that's in the Kuda then, that Atzilus is the Ha'ora of Shem Havaya, the Inevan Bittel, Amiti, Das, Eliyain, Ve'ilu Shem Elokim is Etzem Elokus. It's a name for the Evish Pictus Evi Havaya. And as well known, Havaya Velakim Kol Echad Mitzad Amiti is Bitulam El Havaya, and Amiti Yishachadusam, Legabi Darevishta. Therefore, it's just two different nuances, Legabi the Makablim. However, the nuance of Shem Elokim is that it's Das Tachtein, Mitzad, or that Helem. Then even the Eloki has got a certain kiruv to the Metzias of the Yesh. How much more so the Yesh itself, Mitzad Kufay. And Mamela Dachi in the two Madregas Das, Helem Vadas, Tachtein, Mitzad Elokus Kufay.
Both of these names have shaykhs to individual spheres in Atzilus.
Huh?
Havaya is to Tiferes, and Elokim
Havaya is in this particular in the oil how it's Meyer. You're not even from Das Eli, you're not even from Atzmi Bittel B'Matzias. How does it Chokma? Hulavade V'Eindulos.
That's what I'm asking. How does this relate to how the same names have seemed completely different aspects to them? The name Havaya to Tiferes.
Which same name?
Elokim is to Gvura.
Yeah.
How is that related?
Oh, you mean how is it that Shem Havaya is Tiferes?
How is it that it's in one aspect they seem like completely different?
You mean they're both names of the same Eibusha? How can it be a Havaya Elokim Kol Echad? That's what you're asking? No.
The name Elokim is saying is shaykh to the Malchus, how it's a source almost, but it's also shaykh to Gevura of Etzilas.
Oh, I see what
how is it both of those things?
Yeah, well, the truth of the matter is that Elokim is Gevura da Etzilas, Beikar, how the Gevuras are the Ike Shurish of Malchus, to be quite frank. And the Ike from Gevura da Etzilas is Gevura. We do say sometimes that the Shem Elokim, not how it's connected necessarily with the Etzem Yisavas, is shy to Gevura. However, the pshat is like this, that the whole inyan from Malchus, as we say in Asher every day, Kveid Malchuscho, Yoimeru, Ugvuroscho, Yida Beiru. In other words, what's the difference between Yoimeru and Yida Beiru? Yoimeru is in order for Rachus, it's well known. Amira is a Dibu Rach. The Dibu is a Dibu Kosher. There's a inyan from the Gvuris, how Malchus is Beklau Banui Mehem. Malchus is Beklau Banui from the Gvuris. Because the whole inyan for Malchus is to, as it were, block off that inyan for Atzilus and to reach the inyan of Nivroim Balikvul and each inyan for Zman. And just like we see by the king, that how does he run the whole inyan of the Medina through the inyan from Gvula? There's a certain inyan of Pachad, Melech ala subject. As I mean, all the inyanim from Malchus, Ayidabeiru, that inyan from Toikiv, that comes from the inyan from Gvula. And therefore, there are two levels in Gvulis. It's what we call Etzema Gvulis, or Gvulis Mumutokes, and then there's Gvulis Koshes Yoter, but they're Yerdim, and they become the Etzem Mokeh of the Shefa of Malchus into Biyah. In other words, the whole of Malchus is built from Gvulis to a certain extent. And even the Malchus should be called Sphira, which is Meir into Malchus. But Ike, the Pnimis, that is the Gvulis. But there's still a difference, because Shem Elokim in the Gvura, like we saw, it's only Meir in Atzilas, even the Malchus should be. And then there's a Ashkoy Yesach Hitzanias, which is the inyan from Gvuris, Kipshuton, into the inyan from Malchus.
I'm having trouble understanding a certain concept. We said just now that all the spheres of Atzilus relate to Dea Elyon. And then Malchus, no, Das Elyon. Malchus relates to Das Tachten. We said before that Das Elyon relates to something that's Batul Mibentzias, whereas Das Tachten relates to something that's only Batul B'yesh. Batul B'yesh. So, but it seems sort of weird because we said that all the spheres of Atzilus, they're only Atzmi, even though inside their being, it describes their essence and the word that comes into them. Whereas Malchus gives over to somebody else.
The question. So that's what we find B'Kol Mokim. We also will remember that earlier, just to arrive B'Kitza, we find that there are two inyonim in Malchus. One inyon in Malchus is a sphera in Atzilus. But in Hanami, it's got all the miles of a sphera that's like to bottom, even though its beetle is already beginning to be a mokular element, but in Hanami, it's still in the clothes of beetle, and that's what we call Yamve Yabosha. It's well known, and that was the whole inyan from Kriyas Yamsu, that the inyan of Malchus, Kamoishu, Mamish Batilas, that was Mea Lamata into the inyan from Malchus, that's Nasa Mokular Labia. And therefore, those are the two levels, the Chitonius of Malchus we're talking about here, which is Iyar Derech HaParsa, Shema Pe'ula, or that's the inyan from Yabosha, that's called the dry land of Malchus, or that's how it becomes, or sometimes called Eret. Yamve Eret. And that becomes a mokir to the inyan from Biyah, or Pnimius HaMalchus, Einochanami, it's shy to the inyan from Das Elyon in Atzilus Kufa. And that's what we pointed out, that in the king, there's two inyonim in Roimums, or maybe three. But the close inyan, there's the Roimums of Merli Atzmoi, and then there's the Roimums which Iyar is shy to the people, and in that Kufa two madrigas. That's why I said there are three madrigas. Or that Roimums Atzmoi, or that's even from out the sphere of Atzilus is miyuchet in Das Elyon with all the other spheres.
That's not what I was asking. My question is, so now, it was very interesting to hear Terry's explanations, because it was very interesting to hear the explanations. I've been learning about this specifically for the last few weeks. But my question is, if the spheres only describe their own essence, they're sort of a Matthias, whereas they're supposed to be batul Matthias, whereas Malchus is something that gives over to others, which is seemingly batul Matthias, which it's not for its own, it's only for others. Seemingly it's the opposite of what it's
You make a very good point. I mean, the truth is that what you just said would take quite a sizable Farbrengen, and maybe it would a bit of mashke, come over with care to be mother the whole inyan, the peninsula. Although to a certain extent, you have a very good point that the bittul of Kula Kamei Kalei Chashivei is a bittul chazir. It's true. That's a bittul of miti, and if you bottle believe that you Kula Kamei Kalei Chashivei, you're just sort of you're floating around and ain't shum. Mashenkin, the bittul of Das Taktin and the bittul of Yabosha Sheba Malchus, but that's a bittul of Iyar. And even though he's a Matthias and he's told to do things and he does them, like a Eved, but he's bottled betachlis a bittul. His bittul is a bittul, and therefore it's brought down in my mind from the Rebbe that the whole tachlis, the whole bria, was to reach the bittul of Das Taktin, to reach the bittul of Iyar. Einfach nur, there is got bittul of I mean, and the bittul of Iyar is a be'er to that bittul. Now this is what the Eivsha wanted. He wants that there should be a Eved. You have to be a Eved. An Eved is a type that ultimately speaking, you are a Matthias, but you give that Matthias away completely and say, I have no Matthias, only what the king says, that's what I do. You got it? To a certain extent, the bittul of Kula Kamei Kalei Chashivei is not a Matthias bittul, it's not a Yeshus bittul, but it's a bittul which is a, how do you call it? It's a Gishmak Liatma, it's a inyan miyuchet. I can maybe give you a dugma, there's a famous story, I don't know if it's a famous story, but there's a story, it's just a dugma. The once the Alter Rebbe, after the Stalkers at the Magid, the Alter Rebbe was very close with Reb Mendel Ivitebsker. The Alter Rebbe was very, he wanted to go with him to Eretz Yisrael and everything. The Alter Rebbe held him to be the Rebbe. And he was an amazing person, Reb Mendel Ivitebsker. He was unbelievable. So the Alter Rebbe once was on a journey with Reb Mendel Ivitebsker. And they were traveling somewhere, and it got tremendously cold. In Russian winter is tremendously cold. And Mendel Ivitebsker had winter clothes on or something, and the Alter Rebbe didn't. He'd gone in a hurry on the journey. He wasn't insulated against the cold. And after a while, the old Rebbe got very cold. He felt, the ice of the Russian winter was really cold to him. And he felt that maybe he was going to get a very serious chill. But he didn't want to say anything to Mendel Vitebsk because he said that he didn't, he didn't seem to worry. So all of a sudden, they reach a certain point. Mendel Vitebsk says, "Listen, I'm terribly sorry, we have to turn in here, we're going to go in here, we're going to find a malon, and we're going to spend the night. We're going to have married and spend the night." Okay, he's not going to say differently because he was freezing cold. He's not going to, so they get in there, and later the Mendel Vitebsk met up with somebody, and somebody said, "Why did you turn in here? You guys were in a big hurry to get further." So the Mendel Vitebsk said, "I saw that Reb Zalman, he said, I saw his madrega is Yuri Loa, Bittel Matir. He's completely and utterly bottled tears." He said, "I saw that the cold was affecting him, that he might cholila come down into Yira Tator. He might come from Yira Loa into Yira Tator." He said, I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want cholila he should go to. So that's why I took him into that. It was not because you were freezing cold, but the cold might cause him to go from Yuri Lo to Yuri Tata. Yuri Lo, there's nothing there. So that's what down Mashma in Tanya and Preg Mem Dalit. It appears it's not even a void anymore. You get to that madrega, just bottle like that. You just bottle telekuz. Aber Tadashani, dafke the Chayolim Pshutim, dafke the people here Tator. Or mentally, he didn't want to take the Achayas of bringing the altar into Tator. So he decided to turn it to the altar. Okay, my boy, I don't know if that's giving you some idea of what it's all about. Although it's a very deep question, and I would have an even better suggestion. Let the Rebbe be Mishkala, let the Rebbe be Mishkala. Then we'll sit underneath some big fig tree, and we'll discuss that Indian. And then we'll be able to drink. In the old days of sitting in Russia, they used to say we'll be able to drink caramel wine. They used to think, the wine made in Earth souls called caramel wine. They thought it was a big material.